Thank you all for braving the weather, and as some of you might have heard, the potential flood that is coming our way. I just heard as I was driving in the parking lot that they have declared a warning on Minnehaha Creek, so I'm glad we're not in the Hopkins Forest today. So anyway, thanks for joining us. It's a lot of fun to have this breakfast at Blake or a meal at Minnehaha or whatever we call it. It's fun to have this head of school edition, and again, it'll be neat to hear from Anne Stavney, who is now in her second year at the Blake School. And I have the privilege of introducing this Seattle native who attended Lakeside School, which is much like Blake out in the Seattle area. She graduated in the class of 1981 and went on to Smith College, and quickly returned to the West Coast, where she got her PhD in English at the University of Washington, and then her alma mater called her back. She went and taught at Lakeside and quickly rose through the ranks as middle school director and ultimately the assistant head of school. So she has a great career in Seattle. I feel very fond of Seattle, having lived there 8 years myself. Many of those, the first months while I was there, with a Lakeside graduate who put me up while I was a bachelor there before my wife moved. I went to a number of Lakeside events and feel like I kind of know the place, and kind of feel like I know Anne, even though I didn't meet her until she came here to Blake 2 years ago. And in the last couple of years, she has done a couple of great things, including she led the charge to renovate the science and technology wing in the upper school. She's revised the humanities course in the middle school, and she's developed a new math curriculum in the lower school. So she is here with us not only as the head of school, but also as the parent of a rising first grader this year. So please welcome our head of school, Anne Stavney.
Thank you, Woody. There was a period of time when I had signed my contract for Blake, and I was still working for Lakeside, and Blake was in contact with me through that spring quite a bit. And so my husband fondly called, I was working for Blakeside at that time. And so now I'm at the fully Blake, but it was a fun period, a fun transition. And I want to thank you all for being here this morning. I know it probably wasn't an easy commute as you swam or paddled your way over. It is familiar weather to me, minus the lightning and thunderstorms, but certainly the weather is something that the rain keeps things green, and so I enjoy seeing it. My daughter and I are taking parent-child sailing lessons here on Lake Calhoun. And so last night when I heard the thunder and lightning, my first thought, and someone thought, oh, were you worried about this morning? And I thought, no, I was worried about sailing lessons tonight. So we'll see if we're indoors. It does hardly seem possible that it's been a full year since I last delivered this annual presentation. And as Woody mentioned, it has become a tradition for the head of school to speak at the concluding breakfast at Blake at the end of the year. Last year, I spoke about my first year as head of school, and in particular, I talked about my emerging priorities and perspectives on Blake education. And today, what I'd like to do is broaden the conversation a bit and consider a critical field or a critical area in the field of education that I know many of you, I'm sure, have been reading about, and it's a subject that's really front and center in national conversations, PK-12 education, private schools, public schools, universities as well, and one that's making the headlines. So after framing the issue, I'd like to talk about some of the ways we're addressing it in the Blake community, and after that, I'd like to open up the discussion for questions from all of you. So as members of a community that values academic achievement, it's likely that many of us subscribe to the theory that success in life largely depends on developing cognitive skills. For centuries, schools have been in the business of teaching us these cognitive skills, the ability to read and to write, calculate numbers, remember information, detect patterns, think critically. This has been the focus for many of us of our education and of our schooling. And we measure these types of intelligences, you might say, largely by tests such as the IQ test, which many schools, including ours, use in the lower school for admission. SATs, ACTs, AP exams, GREs. I think many of us in the room have taken some of these tests, and they measure our cognitive skills. In the past decade, however, there have been a number of leading psychologists and neuroscientists who have investigated the relative importance of these cognitive skills to one's success in life, and in particular, children and adolescents. Is their success really predicated on the development of these cognitive skills? What is the relative importance of these skills? And some of you might be familiar with the work of Paul Tough and his recent book titled How Children Succeed: Grit, Curiosity, and the Hidden Power of Character. And Tough highlights this, he looks at the relative importance of cognitive skills in this book and explores it. He's a New York Times writer, he also writes for the New Yorker, and he's regularly featured on public radio's This American Life, so you're probably familiar with his work. If you haven't read his book, I really encourage you to do so. It's really very, very thoughtful. Let me share with you his central thesis. Children's success is dependent not on cognitive skills, but rather on building character. Building character allows children to develop non-cognitive skills such as persistence, curiosity, self-control, conscientiousness, self-confidence, and grit. And building character can only happen if we allow young people to experience failure and to move past it. The good news, Tough says, is that character can be learned, and it can be learned throughout childhood. The character strengths are not innate, they're not magic, they're not based on genes. They're rooted in brain chemistry, and they are molded in measurable and predictable ways. And they're measured by largely the environment in which children grow up. What that means is those of us as parents and grandparents and educators and society as a whole, we can do an enormous amount to influence the development of character strengths in our children and in our students. In his book, Tough takes on the question of why children at both ends of the socioeconomic spectrum often miss out on opportunities to build character. He points out that children who are raised in poverty often face many, many challenges from inadequate nutrition, health care, crime-ridden neighborhoods, underfunded schooling. So despite these challenges, these children often lack the parental or social support that allows them to turn these obstacles into really character-building strengths. Meanwhile, we take the children of middle class and affluent families, and they're often insulated from physical, financial, even social adversity. And we know much has been written about the hovering of helicopter parents. I've learned to call them snowplow parents in the Midwest. And these are parents, and I think all of us see ourselves to some degree. We can say, oh, I probably went a little too far there. But these parents track their child's every movement on the playground and run onto the baseball field when the child gets hit, with the pitch, and deliver clean laundry to their college dorm room and that sort of thing. I think the point here is that for these children, they grow up in kind of this bubble-wrapped environment. That means that there aren't opportunities to stumble, and there aren't opportunities to learn from those setbacks. Tough goes on to argue that children of affluence face their own set of challenges in character building. And he draws on the work of Sanaya Luthar. She's a psychologist at Columbia University, and she has studied affluent children in depth on this particular topic. And in her research, Luthar finds significant rates of depression and substance abuse among adolescents at the high end of the income spectrum. Luther posits that these problems arise most often in high-income homes where kids feel simultaneously the pressure for achievement and for success, and at the same time, an emotional distance from their parents. And so it's this combination of the pressure and the distance that causes the dissonance for children in high-income homes. Similar then to their counterparts in low-income homes, wealthy kids lack the parental support often to turn setbacks into character-building achievements. So the profound difference, of course, is that children from affluent homes do have the resources and often the educational experiences that allow them to do well in material ways. I mean, certainly they graduate from college and despite their struggles and go on to have careers and so forth. What's clear in reading Tufts' work and Luther's work, and then from my own experience, is that we as parents, grandparents, educators, face this natural tension between providing space for students, for young people, providing space and at the same time providing support. And there's always this kind of natural tension between those two. We need to give children space to experience challenges, to experience failures, to take away that bubble wrap and let them face setbacks. But we also need to be aware that too much space, too much distance, especially emotional distance, especially in adolescence, if that is coupled, that distance, with high expectations, that undermines a child's ability to grow and to thrive. So let me get back to this topic of character building. If parents are struggling with providing opportunities to build resistance, self-control, optimism, really so too are schools. And we're seeing schools across the country, public, independent, PK-12, higher ed, many programs that are, and schools that are well-resourced, and those that are struggling financially. Across the board, we see them seeking out programs that build character and curricula that help students work on resilience, self-confidence, self-control. It's a shared goal. We recognize that these are critical skills for our students to learn in order to thrive. Some schools have even taken to giving 2 sets of grades, one for academic work and one for deportment or character. So that the KIPP charter schools, for example, and we have one here in Minneapolis, the Stand Academy, they have both and that's a charter school that largely serves low-income students. They have a report card for academic achievement as well as one that's called a character report card. And a few times a year, every student in their middle school is evaluated on 7 character strengths by each of their teachers. And we see this happening more and more in independent schools. I'm familiar as well with several character traits that will be evaluated by one's advisor or homework room teacher, and then feedback given to parents. At Blake, I think all of you well know that developing character in our students is literally part of our mission. It is not an add-on, it's something that we feel is absolutely integral to preparing students well for their life. We also have identified core values that we stand by and very intentionally integrate into the curriculum at different grade levels. So those are respect, love of learning, integrity, and courage. And I would say they're directly related, these skills, to the non-cognitive skills that Paul Tough talks about in his book, How Children Succeed. At Blake, our arts program, our athletic programs, our clubs, I think are really, they offer authentic ways for students to build character. And so the challenges that we see our students facing on the playing field, on the stage, in a debate tournament, they're integral to building persistence, curiosity, self-control, conscientiousness, self-confidence, and my favorite, grit. And I would argue that we as educators and parents should view athletic and artistic performances as a competition or a model, or in competitions, as a model for dealing with setbacks or failures. I think there's a great deal that we can learn from the way that we think about performances in art or competitions in athletics, and that we can apply also to the academic arena. So if you think about when a student athlete misses a goal, or they don't hit the high note playing some concerto, we don't question them about their effort, we don't question their larger capacity to perform. Instead, we understand those, I don't even know that we call them shortcomings. We call them they're just iterations of learning how to do the given task at hand. And we understand them as part of the game, part of the performance. And I would say these moments of imperfection, if you will, I like to think of them as kind of drafts, first passes, they're precisely when we see our children learning and improving and becoming stronger. And I know for myself and my own experience as a parent and working alongside many other parents, when our children pick themselves up off the ice or keep playing through that concerto and they're unfazed, these are often the moments when we are most proud of them, because we see them developing that strength of character and that poise and that grit. So it's one thing I would say to talk about character. It's another to measure how well we're doing it, how well we're teaching character strengths. Research and examples such as the KIPP charter schools tell us that institutions that implement some sort of measurement tool are better at gauging their own success at growing character in their student populations. And I think many of us are familiar with the notion that which we measure and we point to its value in our community if we're seeking to measure our progress in teaching it. At Blake, I wanted to tell you about two nationally known analytical tools that we have adopted in the last 2 years to measure student success along the lines of character development. The first is one that's called the Mission Skills Assessment, MSA, Mission Skills Assessment. And it was developed by a group of 30 independent schools. The development started about 3 years ago, seeking to measure their own ability to instill these attributes of character. These attributes of character that many independent schools identify in our mission statements as critical to a strong and truly preparatory education for our students. 4 years ago, this core group of students partnered with ETS, the Educational Testing Bureau, to develop this mission skills assessment. And what it measures, and it's focused on middle school students, it measures curiosity, teamwork, creativity, resilience, ethics, and time management. And what happens is the students take the test, and their homeroom teachers also fill out questionnaires about those varied students. And so those are matched up, self-perception and other perception. And we don't look at individual students. Ultimately, we look at them in groups of 2 or 3 to try to understand how are we doing and how are students perceiving their own strength of character or time management skills. How do those match with what someone who knows them well sees them developing. So this year, Blake students took the MSA for the first time, and the data will soon be available to us. We don't have it yet. And what I'm really excited about is that it will allow us to measure how well we're fostering these character building traits, both inside and outside the classroom. We'll administer it for a second time this October. So not only will it allow us to measure against ourselves, but also benchmark against some other schools who have similar missions across the country. How are we doing? And what can we learn from these other schools who are doing particularly well in one way or another? What can we learn and what can we adopt in terms of their character education programs? The second tool that Blake has adopted is known as the Challenge Success Survey. and it is focused on students who are in the upper school. It was developed by researchers from Stanford University's Graduate School of Education, and that group works with educators, parents, and students to look at how best to prepare students for dealing with the challenges of life: stress, time management, sleep deprivation, a number of elements that, again, determine one's ultimate success. I'd like to read a passage from the Challenge Success Statement about the purpose of this test and why their work is important, because I think it's really revealing about the potential for the Challenge Success Survey. Our current hyper-focus on grades, individual achievement, and rote answers gets in the way of healthy emotional development and a real love of learning. And it prevents students from acquiring the exact skills that the new global economy demands. In times of uncertainty, kids need to be resilient, but we've knocked the resilience out of far too many kids with excessive demands and preoccupations with trivial concerns. We worry more about a grade than a good night's sleep. We forget the proven value of play, of time for exploration and reflection, and of meaningful contribution. Academically inclined kids end up feeling only as good as their last performance. Blake upper school students took the Challenge Success Survey last year, and it has offered some excellent insights on our program. And we've already begun work with students and with faculty and with parents on addressing some of the survey findings, particularly areas where we feel we need to grow. Last year, the upper school, as a group, the entire faculty took on the topic of homework. What is effective homework? What is a reasonable homework volume? And how can we get a picture of a student's homework load when, as an individual teacher, I'm assigning my 50 pages of English and my short writing assignment? What does that mean if there are 6 of us assigning similar workload, and that is what the student is taking home? So we really went after the question of homework volume and effective homework. We also, this year, then took on the subject of grading, and the faculty met throughout the year looking at different forms of grading and purposes for grading. What are we trying to do with grades? Are we seeking to motivate? Are we seeking to simply assess? Are we seeking to rank? So what are our goals? And being really clear as an individual teacher and as a department about our goals with grading. So we've taken that on. We've also developed a test calendar, comprehensive test calendar, and the aim there is for students to be able to have a full picture of tests that are coming up, and if they have they have 3 or more tests on a given day, they can ask to take it on another day. So that's a way of coordinating with each other that helps students, again, with that issue of volume. I'm really pleased to say that Blake scored exceptionally high on teacher care and support. 80% of our students reported that they have at least one adult in the school who they feel knows them and they can go to if they have problems. And this sort of social support is critical in a young person's ability to overcome challenges and obstacles. Blake also ranked very high in terms of academic integrity, meaning that the students reported low instances of cheating compared to similar schools nationally. The Challenge Success Survey finds that stress and academic worry are common challenges for Blake students. 79% of participants reported that they were often or always stressed by schoolwork, and 75% reported that schoolwork often or always kept them from getting enough sleep. The good news is that students reported that the work they're engaged in, homework, classwork, projects, is meaningful and authentic. And we ranked very high for that, which is incredibly gratifying. So the challenge for us is not simply to reduce the workload, because the work that students are getting, they find meaningful. They also find it at times overwhelming. The question I would say for us is really, what are our expectations as parents, as grandparents, as educators? What are our expectations for our students in regard to their academic performance, their course load, why 5, why 6, why 7, their course selection, why AP, why not, why honors, why not, and why do we, as educators, parents, why do we hold these expectations? I think that's the question that we need to ask, and students also need to ask of themselves. While the findings of the Challenge Success Survey are important, so too are the opportunities, I would say, that are provided by the Challenge Success Survey data, by the mission skills assessment, by the report cards that they give on character development at KIPP. That the primary value is really, as I see it, is in the conversations that they provoke. Because these assessments give parents, teachers, and students a way to think about and talk about these important skills in a positive, non-confrontational, growth-oriented way. We're really not interested in isolating an individual student and say, wow, you rank low on resilience. No, we want to kind of step back and say, we know this is an important character trait. How are we teaching it? How would you develop it as a student? What have you learned from your experience on the hockey team or you know, in a theater production? So we're able to really engage in that conversation. If I can leave you with one takeaway today, I would ask for you to consider and ask for families to consider examining and discussing with your child how you define success. The definition is going to be different for every family. And this should be an ongoing conversation. Your definition of success could be based on grades, college options, coursework, co-curricular activities, work-life balance, community service, mental or physical health, character, artistic expression, athletic recognition. It's likely that your definition is a combination of these various factors. If so, I'd encourage you to consider which of them are most important. And consider too whether any of them are at odds with each other. And be aware that a child's notion of success might differ from his or her teachers or parents. And I think also keep in mind that our definitions of success might change over time. What these conversations allow is for us to map a shared path with our students, with our children. And they also allow for that emotional closeness that experts say is critical in supporting children through adolescence. You're engaged in this conversation with them. And as we learn that it's critical, especially this emotional closeness, it's critical especially when performance expectations are high in one's environment. In these conversations, it's important to let students know that it isn't always going to go well. Shortcomings in life are inevitable, and everyone makes poor choices. Being open and clear about the reality helps young people meet challenges with a clear head, without this cloud of anxiety or blind panic when things don't go as planned. So I encourage all of you to share your life's journey with your children, your grandchildren, your students. Share it in your conversations with them. So often young people assume that adults have arrived at their state where they are now, just kind of unscathed, and that it was a direct path and all went well. And we all had an unwavering idea, I'm going to go there, and we just went there. And I think it's so important to include when you describe your journey, those setbacks, those challenges, those poor choices that you made. And talk about how those moments made you stronger and what you learned from them. And indicate too that these moments, perhaps more than your successes, defined your long-term skills, your values, your talents, your worldview. I'm really proud that Blake benefits from a tradition of building character. It's a long tradition in the school, both inside and outside the classroom. We view it as essential and part of our mission. And I'm confident that these new tools that we've adopted will help us do even better in the coming years. And I'm certain that we will continue, with your help, to evolve and refine our efforts. So thank you again for being here today. And now I'd like to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Yes. First of all, it's always enlightening year after year to hear about our school. And I think Susie would agree with me. It's almost like reinventing the wheel, because our report card with, does she sit politely? Is she listening in the lower school? Okay? So I think we came out with some grit. But
Yeah.
I'm a little bit concerned. I'm class of 68. My
Yes.
parents put me through Northrop, and my husband and I put 3 children through the Blake School at a 300,000 plus. And there's a billboard, and I'd like you to explain this billboard, which I have a picture of that was out on 494 with about 8 students in it, and it says Blake Pre-K through 12, Hopkins, Minneapolis, and Wayzata. And the tagline in big letters is, because education should be cheap. I'm on the alumni board. I make calls for fundraising, and right now I'm really confused and disappointed.
Wow. Gosh, you know, I am too, because I am not familiar with that billboard.
Well, you're the head of school, so you must be in charge of the people who put out advertising, and the people this and the people that. And I guess there's some of the young folks over there, but quite a groundswell on media, which I'm not a Twitter person because I'm too old. But it's out there, and I find it very distasteful, embarrassing. We worked hard to put our kids through this.
I share that,
And
and cheap is not something that we
and cheap
value.
means many things: crappy education,
Sure.
not a lot of money, no character, whatever. So
Yeah.
I
You know, I'm really glad. Honestly, I'm surprised. I had no idea that that's there. I'm puzzled, and
I'm
that's
Jane
something.
Gordon, and I would like an answer, and I'm sure everyone in this room would. And I'm sure that if it indeed is there, then a letter needs to go out to the alumni population.
Yes.
And
Huh,
parents.
that's. I don't know if any of our communications folks or anyone in the room knows anything about it, but no, there's. That is not something that we sponsored. We certainly will take care of that. That is not. Let me tell you about what we're doing in that area of marketing and branding. We did a deep research about a year ago, and some of you I know filled out surveys to find out and really determine from your experiences with Blake, either as a parent or as an alum, what is it that you value so much about a Blake education? What is that value added? And how can we best communicate that value in our marketing, in our advertising, and really be true to that? What we found across the board, despite all sorts of other differences, that across the board what people most valued was their academic experience and the preparation that they didn't even know until they got to college and beyond. Wow, this was remarkable. I really developed critical thinking skills, the capacity to communicate in writing and orally. And that is what we're putting front and center in our advertising, in our admissions view book, in our new website, which will be launched this fall, in any number of ways that we're communicating about the school. We also, as a second factor, number one is academic excellence. Number two, it refers to just what I've been discussing, is that our students have a well-rounded experience. They develop these character traits that we deeply value: respect, integrity, love of learning, and courage. And so that well-rounded experience, that strength of character, is the second piece that we're emphasizing. And then the third is preparation for a global world. We think it's very, very important. In fact, it's critical that students not only have the academic preparation, they not only have the character strength, but they're also able to interact with different cultures, people of different worldviews, in a very competent and respectful way, and they're comfortable and prepared. And they're also prepared, they can speak at least 2 languages, maybe 3, so language proficiency, very, very important, knowing the history and the economics and the literatures of countries around the world, very, very important. And so that preparation, that global citizenship and preparation for a global world is the 3rd element that is emphasized in all of our materials. So whoever did the billboard, which we will get on at 9 a.m. this morning, is certainly not in keeping with what we're wanting to say about the school and what we believe is critical about the value of the Blake education. Tom?
I had a conversation with one of the Highcroft teachers during the winter, and the topic was cursive writing.
Yeah.
And what I've read a little bit about is what's, in this day and age, what kind of writing skills do our youngsters need? I'm just curious, as an educator, what your thoughts are and what is Blake doing in regard to that?
Yes. And some of you might have seen the New York Times article recently that came out about what teaching cursive writing, what that allows for the brain. It's a different kind of development because of the kind of spatial elements of writing cursive. We start with printing. We do some cursive writing as students are interested. I don't actually know if we do it in a methodical way. I don't think we do. We certainly teach keyboarding. That's a very important skill. But I don't know how far we go down the road with the cursive writing. I've got one lower school teacher here I'd be interested to know. Chris, can you weigh in on that?
Well, I do know that the Language Arts Department, under the leadership of Rick Kaywood, the PK-12 department chair, is investigating this. It's certainly one of the debates is what is the best use of our time as we become more sophisticated in terms of all the things we're trying to accomplish in all the different content areas. And as we understand how complex each of those content areas are, even for young kids, it's really, that's kind of front and center for us is it the best use of time to be learning manuscript printing, to also be this newer thing for many of us, the proficiency in keyboarding, which is becoming a much more significant thing in this modern age. So there's time devoted to that. And is it also sensible then to devote time to mastering, becoming fluent in cursive handwriting? And it's certainly the evidence is building for that might not be the best use of our time. I don't think that decision has been finalized at this point. I know Rick Kaywood is investigating this, and it's something that we're all thinking very carefully about, but it's not a flippant kind of thing where we're just saying, oh, we don't have time for it, let's just get rid of it. It's really being looked at closely.
Great, thank you. It's Malcolm.
I have a different kind of question I would like to pose for you. I'd like to shift a little bit to a different way of looking at what I think you're evaluating, and that is Blake in the community, Blake and the community, and the students' involvement and the families' involvement, and the involvement of all of us together.
Yes.
We have a tendency always to slice up and separate out.
Mm-hmm.
When you begin to integrate and put things together, that's really what the world is all about.
Yes.
And I wonder if you couldn't just share a few minutes with us as to the progress we're making in being much more involved in, not just in a leadership capacity, but day to day with what takes place around us.
And I think it's an excellent point, Malcolm, and it's one that we're working on in a number of ways for several reasons. One is that we are members of the community, and with that comes a responsibility to participate fully in the community and to develop partnerships with other schools, with community service organizations, and to really have our students understand not only the global but also the local, and what are their skills and what are their responsibilities in participating in the community. A new program for us this year is in the middle school, for example, is we developed a new model for our community service. And we call it service learning because there's really learning that comes, we want to emphasize the learning about each other that happens and about us and this organization or the people with whom they're working that happens in these opportunities. The students came up themselves with their service projects. The notion here is that part of the value in doing service is actually understanding where there's a need, understanding the importance of having that need come from the person who, or the organization that you'll be working with, so that you're not doing something or painting something or building something that really no one really wants, but that's what you wanted to do. And so the students have been organizing those projects, and they did, the entire middle school. They picked areas that they wanted to work, they grouped together across grade level, and then they went out 4 full days this past year working on those projects in a sustained way with that organization. And it was, as you might imagine, having students develop the projects is much messier, much more complicated, but we find so critical to the success of that program and to what they're going to learn from it. And often, you know, social service agencies are underfunded. Finding somebody to get a hold of every day is challenging. People don't call back. There are, you know, there are transitions, all of the challenges that you face in trying to set up a service project with an organization, the students took on. And then they shared at the end of the year their own experiences with each other and what they learned, not only in the aid, whether they were working at a food bank or at a senior home. They shared what they learned about that organization, about the people they encountered there, and also about themselves. So I think that's one example of something we're really trying to help students understand their role in the community. We also have the Learning Works, which I think many of you are familiar with. It starts our 14th year this coming Monday. We have 130 Minneapolis Public School students who are at various stages of in between 6th and 7th, 7th and 8th and 9th grade, engaging in a 6-week program with us in the summer. It's one that the aim is to really prepare them, help them hit the ground running when they get to high school, and to have a cohort of colleagues that they feel like they can really look to and depend on as they go through their high school years. And we have remarkable success, that program, in college acceptance and also college completion. It's really a very, very successful program, and many of our Blake students work in that program. They're teachers, they're counselors, and they also engage in, throughout the school year, they have service Saturdays where they all do service together. So that, I think, is a fabulous opportunity for Blake as a school to really be engaged in the community, and for our students to be working alongside and teaching public school students, middle school students, and really learning from them and teaching them as well. So that's another program that I think it's in line with what independent schools are calling a private school with a public purpose. And I would say that's a public purpose of really encouraging, really supporting education more broadly than simply for our Blake students, but through, you know, the Minneapolis Public Schools.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes.
I found missing in your definitions of success what I would call the most critical item, and that's people skills.
Yes.
Grit is important, integrity is certainly important, time management, but am I missing something in that definition of character that would really focus on that?
You know, I would say respect is one that is front and center, and that's I think really the foundation of effective people skills. Respect for each other, respect for others' life experiences, respect for other views. I hear what you're saying, and I think I would say I would say respect is really at that, and also integrity, being who you are and being who you say you are. Being authentic in that regard is also a critical people skill if you're going to be effective in relating with others. I don't know if you had some other ways you were thinking about people skills that you would encourage us to consider.
I don't have a magic formula for
Sure.
that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that even the psychologists and psychiatrists have
Mm-hmm. You know, I find people skills one of the most, it's something that I look for first in hiring, particularly hiring administrators. There are a lot of things that you can teach people, and some of people skills that you can teach people, but with administrators, we really need them to hit the ground running and be able to work with people effectively. And especially in an institution where you're always balancing tradition and change, always trying to, okay, what do we need to hang on to that's really valuable? How can we bring that up to date? How can we make that relevant? You're always in that negotiation between those kind of poles, if you will, and the people skills is what makes that effective, how to bring people along, how to cultivate not only leadership but followership. And that's critical in our administrators. So I think, and our teachers, modeling it for our students is something that we certainly do every day. Tom?
You talked about studied grading systems, and you talked about homework volume.
Mm-hmm.
Have you come to any decisions or conclusions or changes in those areas?
We have. I mean, we have a number of teachers and departments who are working on what many of you are probably heard referred to as the flipped classroom. So the notion, there are many versions of the flipped classroom. Yeah, I think the question, one of the questions that is provoked by the internet and by online learning is what is the value, what is most valuable to have occur in the classroom. So when you're a teacher with a student in the classroom, what happens there that can only happen there? And what things can we shift from the classroom, outside of the classroom, in order to make better use of that one-on-one time? So for example, a class lecture, if it's a mini lesson of 20 minutes, is time best spent with having the teacher deliver that mini lesson of 20 minutes in the classroom? Or would time be better spent having the student watch that lecture at home, take notes in a video format, take notes, and then come to class the next day and ask questions, and then do a project where you're applying the concepts, and the teacher can work one-on-one with folks, and they can work with each other. Is that time better spent? And in a number of instances, yes, it is. And so we're really looking at, we had a number of departments and teachers who are looking at ways to make that classroom time as valuable as possible. And it's really the interaction with the student and the teacher, and students with each other, that is so valuable about that classroom time. And so I would say certainly we've explored ways of making best use of that time. And that means shifting then what homework is about. You know, are you doing 20 homework problems, or are you watching the lecture and doing the first homework problem and coming with your questions, and then working with a partner on further problems that are really applying the skills and working with each other to try to understand the concepts in an applied way. So that would be one example. Yeah, and I want to get to John, and then I'll get to you. Yes, John?
I think Blake does a tremendous job. They always have. I assume they always will.
Yeah.
What is the challenge for a school like Blake to prepare students for a college experience when the college experience is getting to be, fairly diverse, would be a polite way of putting it, teaching Lady Gaga 101. Does Blake say, maybe you want to skip Lady Gaga 101 and concentrate over here? how do you coordinate with the colleges and universities?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you had sent that in, John, ahead of time. I myself never took Lady Gaga 101. I think that probably dates me. But I understand what you're saying, is that we see increasingly kind of esoteric classes or ones that are fairly seemingly narrow in scope. I think what we do at Blake is really focus on teaching critical thinking skills. That's what it's all about. And so it's not the what, it's the how and the why. So when we're teaching a novel, for example, it's not knowing every character and the historical context and every detail about the author's life and so forth. It's how do I think about these characters and the themes? What do they say about the historical moment in which this is written? And it's those thinking skills, and then how do I write about that in a way that's persuasive or informative or exploratory or any number of ways that we can write for different purposes. Those are the skills that are transferable to any setting. And so we were not interested in kind of the topic of the day. It's really how do we think critically. Sometimes that will mean we're thinking critically about a topic that is relevant to students, exciting. Courses in Pakistan and India, just central, or in the Mideast, as central to what's happening today in the world. And so we're teaching them to think critically about things that are relevant and current to them. But the goal is not Lady Gaga or any number of other esoteric topics. It's really how we're teaching them to think about that topic and any number of things. So that I would say, and as I look back on the history of Blake and talk with many of you who are from much earlier classes, that's been a constant of Blake and something I'm very, very proud of. It's not something that's static, though. How we teach it is one that we need to continue to evolve. So, yes?
I want to comment on, because I have a rising senior, on how some classes have changed the grading system.
Yes.
Parts of it is great, parts of it I don't fully agree with. I think it should happen at the 9th and 10th grade level, not the 11th and 12th grade level for a class. And just to explain, one of the classes that my son took, which was a semester class, he had to learn a skill to get a certain grade. You had to get to a certain number, 1, 2, 3, or 4, 4 being the best, 1 being the worst, which is great because you really shouldn't move on until you've accomplished one skill. However, doing that at the 11th and 12th grade level was not appropriate in my mind as a parent, because those are very stressful years as a student, the class didn't get organized till halfway through the semester, so nobody had figured it out, the whole class. So it was, I guess that was the learning curve, unfortunately, for my son's class, but I appreciate that. But I think it's more appropriate at the 9th and 10th grade level than the 11th and 12th grade level. But I totally get that concept, and it is appropriate that you should master, the lowest skill first before you progress. So anyway.
Thank you, Annie. I appreciate that feedback, and I think you're right. I mean, we're balancing. Right. Our desire to develop these new programs, looking at what grade levels it's best to implement them and when. When I met with seniors this past fall, this past year, I met with the whole senior class in groups of their homeroom, groups of 8 or 10. And, for them, their senior fall was the most stressful time of their entire life. And they were surprised by that because they thought it was going to be junior year and then they'd be done with it. But the notion of, it was a combination of good things and not so good things. So the opportunity to really think about college, exciting, daunting, a lot of work. The opportunity to take electives that they've never had the opportunity to take before because it didn't fit in their schedule. They wanted to take a heavy course load. They want to take China and Japan. and the elective in myth and romance, and the elective, and so they want to take these. It's exciting. No, I'm not going to cut back on my courses, right? When I can take these things that are so inspiring. But for us to be aware of the context for the students, I think is a really good point. Yeah.
Just, all those kids developed a lot of character in that class.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
It's a great college essay in the making.
Yes, there you go. Nice way to look at that.
Yeah.
In order to get you to your 9 o'clock assignment,
Yes.
you didn't know you had before you came.
That's right. Yes.
One of the things I sometimes get to do is ask the last question. So I have one for you, and that is, a lot of us, when I look around, went to Blake, Northrop, the combined schools, and there was a concept of it being, very much of a family school, of brothers, sisters, siblings went. I had an interesting conversation with someone the other day who said they just pulled their child from Blake, sent him to another school that starts with a B. The reason was because in the push for academic excellence, in this person's mind, just quoting, that the push for academic excellence has developed kind of a very high, as he said, just one track, and if your kid doesn't fit on it, the school doesn't work. So just one comment, but the whole idea, and siblings have been there and what have you, so just, if you could just talk about that a little bit, because family's important, academic excellence is important. How do you see the two coming together, and where might they clash?
Yeah, I think one of the things I was struck by when I came to Blake is how much of a family school it is. It's very different from my previous experience, where you do have families, children, grandchildren, you have all the siblings. I mean, we've got one family with 5 kids in the school. I mean, people are all in the school, and it's really stunning and wonderful to me. And so many faculty and staff children at the school. And that says to me that our families, we believe in the education, and that it is not just where our kids go to school. It's where we have our life and where we have our friendships as adults and students. So I would say in the scheme of independent schools, we are incredibly family oriented. And when we're not able to accept a student, when they might be a sibling, or a legacy family, we look long and hard at that, very long and hard, because we believe in it being a family school. And at the same time, we want to ensure, bottom line, that every student can succeed. And if we see for one reason or another that a student isn't ready to succeed, and I say isn't ready because it's not a static thing, and that might change over time, and we certainly have students who come to Blake later than their first application, but we look long and hard at that, and we really value that. We also, I would say, a common trait among our students, and it is part of our mission, is to challenge students academically, and to have a rigorous college preparatory curriculum. And so we're always balancing kind of the wideness of in any one classroom, you have a range of abilities, a range of skills. I like to think of it as students are at different places along the path. That's what it is. How big can that range be in order for a student a teacher to really serve all those students well? So it's intention always, that I really like to think, my best success story is when we have a student who has to leave for one reason or another, their choice, or we might counsel them out, when they come back, that they've developed strategies to address whatever that issue might be, and then they come back and really succeed. And we have a number of instances of that. So, and I am hoping that's the case with this young man. So, okay.
And thank you very much. And I just have to compliment the Blake community that we wanted to make her feel so at home here that we ordered this Seattle weather for her. So anyway, Thank you all for coming. Have a great summer. Becky has told me that we have a pile of names that are really exciting for the speakers series at Breakfast at Blake this coming year. So watch the newsletters, watch your mailbox, watch your emails, and come join us at Breakfast at Blake on the third Thursday of every month. So we'll see you in September. All the best.